Welcome back, survivor. If you can hear this, it means you're still alive. This is Jack's Nightmares, and this is your next story. I got up at 4:30 and knew straight away I wasn't going to get back to sleep. The air in the flat felt thick, like it always did when you lived above a takeaway and shared space with someone who never opened the windows. My mate Mark was out cold on the sofa again, snoring like he meant it, half a pizza on his chest and the telly still on from whatever rubbish he'd passed out watching. He hadn't worked a shift all week. I hadn't said anything. He'd just gotten laid off from the warehouse and wasn't taking it well. Still, the smell in that place, burnt oil, beer, sweat, old socks, was unbearable by morning. I didn't want another argument about dishes or electricity, so I didn't say a word. I grabbed my keys and left. My phone was dead. I hadn't charged it overnight again. I figured I'd sort it later. I needed to get out, clear my head. No plan, just noise in my skull that wouldn't shut up. There's only ever one solution when that happens. Bike, road, time alone, that's it. So I rolled the bike out from the alley behind the building. It's a knackered Yamaha XJ that used to be cherry red under the stickers and grime. Not fast, not flashy, but it never let me down. Chain had a bit of slack, front tire a little soft. Whatever, I'd sort it after coffee. Maybe. Croydon at that hour looked washed out and dead quiet. Streetlights still buzzing above empty pavement. That weird half-light where everything feels stuck between one thing and the next. A fox watched me from beside a skip, tail twitching, nose covered in old takeaway sauce. I rolled slow down the back lanes. No traffic cameras if you knew which streets to cut through. My helmet's inner padding stank of sweat and rain, but I didn't care. The jacket was old, the zip stiff, one elbow patch flaking away. Didn't matter. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I just needed space. Ride to the edge of the city and maybe beyond. I didn't tell anyone I was going. No one would have noticed. Mum stopped texting months ago after I missed her birthday. We hadn't spoken properly since Dad's funeral 2 years back. Mark wouldn't bother checking unless I took the kettle with me. I had no job waiting. The last garage I worked at paid in cash, and when the owner got hit with fines for dodgy MOTs, he cut everyone loose. I didn't argue. I wasn't exactly chasing a future. I scraped by, did what I had to, paid rent late, ate whatever was yellow stickered at closing. Got by. That's all I knew. So when I set off that morning, it wasn't some mission. I wasn't running from anything big. Just wanted to ride. Just wanted to be anywhere but that flat. I didn't even know where I was heading. Not really. Godstone came to mind. There's a lay-by just past the exit with a dodgy little kebab van that opens early. Not many know about it. Owner doesn't talk, just grunts and raps. Greasy chips and limp salad, but the meat's decent. I liked that van. Might have been the only consistent thing left around here. I followed instinct. Cut through Thornton Heath, followed the A road toward Purley, then peeled off toward the A23. Figured I'd join the M25 and do a lap, clear my thoughts, breathe something other than stale chip fat. It was still early enough that the motorway hadn't clogged yet. A few vans, a couple of lorries, office workers trying to beat the rush. Everyone sat quiet in their boxes, coffee in hand, eyes forward, living the same loop they always did. I envied how normal it looked from the outside. I kept the visor cracked a sliver to keep it from fogging. Engine thrummed under me nice and steady. Nothing fancy, no Bluetooth, no dashboard nav, just analog gauges and a rattle somewhere in the frame I never bothered fixing. The helmet radio was long dead. I never remembered to charge it. Didn't matter. I preferred the quiet. I didn't want news. I didn't want music. I just wanted the road and the wind and nothing else. Nothing buzzing in my ears. Nothing asking me to be anyone or do anything. The air changed the further I got from Croydon. Not just cleaner, lighter, less weight pressing on your chest. The skyline opened up, brick and grime gave way to tree lines, and mist sitting low in the dips between fields. The sun was just starting to climb proper, cutting through the haze like it hadn't made its mind up whether today was going to be warm or cold. The kind of indecisive weather England does better than anywhere. I didn't check the time, didn't check my messages. If something important happened, it could wait. I'd been telling myself that for years. and so far, nothing important ever had. I aimed for the turnoff just past Reigate, kept my speed under 70 to stretch the fuel, and watched the slip roads as they came and went. People merging, people exiting, lives intersecting for half a second then gone again. No one looked, no one waved. That suited me fine. That stretch before the M23 interchange has this weird pocket of silence if you hit it before rush hour, a kind of calm you don't expect on a London ring road, the way the sound bounces off the trees, the way the light hits the glass on the other cars. It's like a dead zone where time pauses. I always liked that part. That's why I noticed straight away when the cars ahead of me lit up with brake lights all at once. Not in waves. All at once. A red wall. I eased off the throttle and coasted into the space between lanes. Nothing dramatic. Just a small shift in the road's rhythm. Lorries slowing. Vans edging forward. Some bloke in a silver hatchback getting out of his car to crane his neck up the line. I figured maybe an accident. A spill. Happens all the time. No sirens yet. No panic. Just hesitation. Then that horn. That long, shrill, unbroken horn from somewhere up the motorway. Not the kind you used to warn. The kind that gets stuck when someone slumps over the wheel and doesn't get back up in. I flipped the kill switch and let the silence catch up to me. It was the first time I thought something felt off. Not wrong. Just off. Like whatever was up there wasn't part of the usual mess. Like the noise didn't belong in the normal world anymore. A man climbed on the bonnet of his car and pointed up the road like he'd seen something worth shouting about. Another woman had her phone out, recording. Always the phone. No one helps anymore. Just film and wait. I pushed forward again, rolling between the lines at a crawl, engine off, clutch in, trying to see what they were seeing. That's where it really started. Shouting. One voice, then more. The sort of shouting that has no argument in it. I smelled hot brakes and diesel. Up ahead, a lorry sat across 2 lanes like it had slid and stuck there. The trailer was skewed, and the cab door was open. The driver was on the ground. People were around him, not helping, just backing off with their hands up. Someone else sprinted past in bare feet, moving wrong, arms straight out, eyes wide and empty. He hit a man in a high-vis vest so hard the man toppled and smacked his head on the barrier. The barefoot man got on top and started hammering at the face with both hands. No pause, no breath. Brutal. The sound of it was short, like meat getting punched. No film filter on it. A woman screamed and ran toward the 2 of them, then changed her mind and ran the other way. I wanted to think it was some fight that started over nothing. People get strange on motorways. But another person came out of the lorry door, fell to one knee, snapped his head up, and ran like he had never learned brakes existed. He went straight into a knot of onlookers. He bit a man on the ear, then the cheek. I do not have nicer words. It looked like an animal attack. People scattered, tripped, got up, fell again. A child cried from somewhere inside a car with closed windows. I pushed the bike off the live lane onto the hard shoulder and fired it up. I should have left. I did not. I crept closer to see if there was a gap I could slip through. Stupid. But I did it. Someone yelled at me to help. I looked over. A woman in a business suit dragged another woman by the armpits along the shoulder. Blood soaked the second woman's blouse. Not a movie smear. Soaked. The business suit woman locked eyes with me through my visor and said something that did not reach me. The injured woman jerked like a salmon in a net and kicked at the barrier. Her face was wrong. Too much white in the eyes. Spit hanging from her lips like strings. She twisted and snapped at the helping hands with her teeth. The business suit woman let go, shocked, and stumbled back. I shook my head, pointed at the bike, and mouthed the word move. Then I rolled forward again because the knot up ahead had shifted. Past the jackknifed lorry, there was no open road. Another pile-up. A delivery van had crushed into a saloon car, and the saloon had kissed the back of a coach. Forget it. No way through. I heard that horn again, and turned. A white estate car was shuddering in place, horn jammed under the weight of a man who slammed both palms on the bonnet, and then threw his head into the windscreen. The glass webbed. He threw his head again. It cracked. He did not stop. Inside the car, a boy stared at me with a plain, dull expression and did not blink. The man's forehead opened and smeared red across the spidered glass. He kept going as if pain was not a thing anymore. I put the bike in gear and rode the chevrons at the junction exit like a rat between bins. A van tried to block me. The driver waved his arms and shouted that I should help. I slid the clutch and slipped past his bumper. I did not listen. I did not want to be a hero. The off-ramp spat me onto a roundabout clogged with stopped cars. Someone had abandoned a horse trailer and left the animal standing on the pavement with a rope tied to a sign. The horse stamped and blew warm breath, eyes rolling. A man tried to calm it, voice high and thin. 2 people sprinted past me on foot at full tilt, heads down, not looking anywhere but forward. Sirens started, distant and then near. One police car came wrong side through the roundabout and mounted a curb to get around us. The officer in the passenger seat had a radio pressed flat to his head. He stared at nothing as they went by. Another siren wailed from the motorway above and then cut off mid-howl. A helicopter beat the sky overhead and banked away toward London. I picked a road that ran south because south looked thinner. The sign said Godstone, fine. I threaded around cars at walking speed. People shouted. Someone banged on my pannier and told me to stop. I cracked the throttle and left him behind. The village looked normal at first. Shops shut, some half open. A butcher with a handwritten sign saying back in 5. A bus at the stop with the interior lights on, and nobody driving. A woman pulled a suitcase that rattled over the paving slabs and slapped her thigh every other step. A teenage boy sat on a low wall with a skateboard and filmed me on his phone. He looked like he was filming the weather. He was not there 5 minutes later when I looked back. I cut through to a petrol station because my gauge sat a hair under half, and I know how fast that turns to a quarter when things go wrong. The forecourt had cars queued badly, not in the marked lines, every driver all elbows and horns. I rolled to the side, killed the engine, and walked the bike up next to a pump like I belonged there. A man with a red face shouted that I was jumping the queue. I stared at him through the visor and did not move. The attendant inside the shop waved his arms and pointed at the card machine like a referee. People were still paying. Good. I filled both tanks up to the neck, dribbles be damned, and when the same red-faced man started toward me, I put the nozzle back, paid contactless through the plexi, and left while he was still coming up with a speech. Back on the B road, the noise was wrong for a village. It had that constant note of panic, like someone had set a kettle to scream and walked away. A man ran into the road and flapped his arms at me. Not a wave, a block. He wore a tie that had been loosened until it hung like a cord. He had a cut above his eye. He stepped at me like he expected me to slow down. I did not. I swerved around him. He swung a car jack and clipped my left pannier. The bike twitched. I wobbled and pulled it back. In my mirror, a woman came behind him at full sprint, faster than someone in office shoes should be able to move. She hit him in the back and both went down. She did not try to pin him like a wrestler. She smashed her face into the side of his head like she wanted to break bone with bone. He went limp. She came up streaming red from her mouth and did not stop. She stood and scanned for more like a dog set loose. Her eyes snapped to me. I opened it up and went. It spread fast. That is all I can say without pretending I understand it. People who were normal 5 minutes before went empty and savage like someone had pulled a plug. No stumble, no stagger, just a snap and then a sprint. If one of them saw you, it was like a fuse hit. All legs and elbows. No dodging, straight lines, full speed. I wanted out of towns. Woods and farm tracks are not friendly to bikes with road tires, but cars cannot choke a forest. I took a lane marked as unsuitable for heavy goods and followed it into green. Hedgerows closed in. The road pitched up and down like a small boat, mud across corners where tractors had cut them. I slowed and held low in the seat and let the engine pull me instead of fighting it. A pheasant burst out and ran stupidly up the road in front of me, then split left. I breathed tight through my nose and tried to ignore the fact that my hands shook on the grips. At a crossroads with a broken signpost, I stopped and killed the engine. The quiet had weight, wind in the hedges, a chainsaw far off, a dog barking 3 fields over, then silence, then barking again like there was a pattern to it. I took my helmet off to listen better. The air smelled clean. There was a guttering hum in my ears from the ride. I dug out my burner phone and checked for signal. 1 bar, then nothing, then 1 bar again. My mate had sent a message an hour earlier. Bad trouble central, do not come back. Then another, do not answer the door. The network stuttered, and the timestamp did not make sense. I pocketed the phone and put the helmet back on. I kept moving, because that is the only thing I know how to do when people lose their minds. I passed a lay-by with a fly-tipped fridge and an old tire. A Ford Estate sat on the verge with both doors open and the engine running. Radio on loud. A children's song about a bus. No one inside. The grass nearby was flattened where someone had rolled. A school bag lay split open with exercise books spilled out. I did not stop. I did not need to see more. At a small cluster of houses near a railway bridge, a man flagged me down with a rifle over his shoulder. Old farm piece, wooden stock, bolt action. He planted himself in the middle of the lane and held up one hand and the barrel. I slowed because a rifle on a country lane gets my attention more than a red face at a pump. He had the look of someone who had done harvest for 50 years and had the back to prove it. He called out, asked if I had seen the army. I said no. He asked again, louder, like maybe the word had not reached my ears. I said no again. He told me in a straight voice that his wife had changed 20 minutes ago, and he had locked her in the pantry and he needed the army now. Please. I looked past him. In the open door, I saw a cramped farmhouse kitchen with lino flooring, and a door with a chair jammed under the handle. Something hit that door from the inside hard enough that the top edge jumped and the chair hopped. Once, twice, fast, no rhythm. He looked at me like I had brought the problem with me. I did not tell him what to do. I am not a counselor. I rolled past. He did not try to stop me when I made the choice for him. Back on the M25 feeder, I could see smoke pillars in the direction of London. Not one, many, thin and black. A helicopter hung low and then whipped away. The motorway itself lay still like a dead river full of cars. People were on the embankment, moving in lines toward the field fences. Some helped each other, others shoved. A woman in a long dress tripped on the wire and hooked herself like a fish and hung there, wriggling hard to get free, and a man behind her climbed over her back to get over the fence faster. She did not scream. She made a sound like anger held behind clenched teeth. I needed tools, and something better than a cheap folding blade. A breaker bar beats bare hands. A chain lock beats wrists. I knew a small motor factors in an industrial park near Caterham that ran a side room of odds and ends. I aimed for it. The closer I got, the more the roads were blocked by cars parked like the drivers had given up in the middle of a thought. I filtered until I could not. Then I pushed, engine off, squeezing the bike through gaps that were not gaps. A van door opened onto my hand and pinned my fingers against the bar end. I yelped and yanked back. The driver came out wild-eyed and started to apologize, then saw the bike and asked for a lift. He tried to climb on. I shoved him off and told him to go. He grabbed for the bars again, begging, and then his eyes jumped past me and he ran without another word. He left the van running. I pushed on. The unit shutters were down when I reached the industrial park. One office had smashed front glass, and somebody had tried to broom the shards into a pile and given up. I could hear movement behind the motor factor's shutter. Not voices. The sort of movement a person makes when he is trying not to breathe and failing. I knocked on the corrugated steel. It stopped. I said the owner's name through the gap at the bottom and told him I was not police. I just wanted a pry bar and a chain. He did not answer. I heard a scrape of something heavy moved and a whisper that said, "Leave it." I did not have time to debate. I went around the back and found the skip. I dug until my gloves were black and came up with a steel length from a shelving unit, 2 coach bolts, and a busted bicycle D-lock with the shackle still sound. Good enough. I taped the coach bolts to the end of the steel with parcel tape from my pannier and made a crude hammer. It looked stupid. It would do. When I came back around the corner, a boy in a school blazer stood by my bike. He had a kitchen knife in his hand, and he was testing my pannier lid like he was thinking of prying it. He was pale and shaking. When he saw me, he lifted the knife toward me in a clumsy guard. I kept the bike between us and told him to stop. He said he needed food. I told him there was nothing in there. He said he did not believe me. He stepped around the headlight. I raised the steel bar because he had a knife and I am not keen on getting opened up in a car park. Then his eyes changed. He looked past me, like the van driver had, and he ran. He dropped the knife. It clinked on tarmac. I did not turn my back to see what he had seen. I backed to the bike with the bar up and then swung my leg over and started it. The sound of the starter motor felt like a flare. It brought things to life. 2 men came out from behind a parked lorry in a sprint, clothes neat, office shoes, heads snapping left and right like dogs catching smell. One saw me and locked on. He screamed. I do not have a better word. It was high and flat and full. He ran at me with both arms rigid. I dumped the clutch and the rear tire stepped sideways. I corrected and shot between them. One clipped my elbow with his fingers. He did not chase the bike. He turned and sprinted toward the first human he saw next, which was a woman getting out of her car to see what the noise was. He hit her, and the 2 went down and were still moving when I turned the corner. I needed a place where cars could not box me in. The woods by the Caterham Viewpoint would work for a stop. I took the back roads up and families were out on foot now with bags and prams and dogs on leads, moving toward the fields with that numb determination you see when a train platform gets closed and everyone starts walking along the track bed. No one spoke in full sentences anymore. It was all fragments. He has a bite. Do not stop. Give me the keys. Where is my mum? A siren would start, rise, and die. At the Viewpoint car park, a handful of people had the same idea. 3 cars parked nose to fence. A couple in cycling kit holding each other like that would freeze time. A man in a high-vis jacket holding a first aid kit and not opening it. A teenage girl sitting on the bonnet of a Vauxhall eating crisps like she could eat through the problem. I pulled to the edge and killed the engine. The wind carried a smell from the city. Electric fire, hot plastic. The sky toward London looked dirty. The teenage girl asked if I had heard the radio. I shook my head. She said the BBC kept losing presenters, and then music would play. Then an emergency voice would come on and read walking instructions that sounded like a bad joke. Stay indoors. Avoid contact with infected persons. Do not attempt to escort affected family members. The girl laughed once without humor and asked me who wrote that line. A scream cut across the car park from the tree line. Not the flat scream of the empty ones. A human scream with words in it. Help me. A man stepped out of the bracken, fell to his knees, got up, and started toward us, waving his normal hand while his other hand hung at a wrong angle. He had the look of a jogger who has tripped and tried to turn it into a run. He said, please. The cyclist couple moved like they wanted to go to him. The man in high-vis blocked them with one arm without looking. He said, do not move. The jogger took 3 steps, and then something came out of the trees behind him like it had been fired. It was small. Maybe a boy, maybe a woman. Hard to tell. It hit his back and both went down and rolled in gravel. The empty one bounced up faster than gravity should allow and climbed the jogger like a ladder. The jogger got his good arm around the thing's neck and squeezed and pushed his thumb into the eye. I will not pretend it was noble. It was survival. He screamed for us to help. None of us did. We watched like cows by a fence line watching dogs fight. The girl on the bonnet put her crisps down and slid off the car without a word. The high-vis man said do not, and she stopped. The jogger's voice ran out like a match. The empty one stopped moving. 2 more came out of the trees, and we did not stay to watch what they wanted. I fired the bike and rolled. I thought about heading south toward the coast, but every person I know in that direction would have had the same idea. The roads would be jammed, and the ferries would be dead. I took the ridge road toward Oxted and aimed for small lanes that I knew from riding at night. The hedges closed in again, and the trees arched overhead. The air cooled. The smell of leaf rot and diesel mixed. In the mirror I saw a police helicopter hover low over the motorway, and then flare up and away. A second later, a bloom of smoke rose where it had been. Maybe a car fire, maybe worse. I did not know, and I lost the urge to find out. I cut the engine at the top of a farm track and listened. Voices carry far in the country, and I did not want voices. I walked the bike behind a copse of trees and covered it loosely with a blue tarp I found in my pannier. That tarp had been balled in there for 2 years, waiting for a camping trip I never took. It finally had a job. I sat with my back to the front wheel where I could feel the metal, and I waited until the sense of running in my head slowed enough that I could think in straight lines. I made a list in my head. I do that when choices get big. Petrol, water, food that does not need heating, tools, a proper weapon if I could get one, a quiet place to sleep with one way in that I could block. I hate lists, but lists hate panic. I drank from my bottle, chewed 2 mints to hide the stink in my helmet, and watched a line of ants climb a weed like nothing in the world had changed. Movement on the lane snapped me up. A family walked tight together. Mum, Dad, daughter about 8, son about 5. Dad carried a cricket bat. Mum had a cat in a carrier that yowled like it understood English and hated all of it. They saw me and the dad raise the bat halfway in greeting and halfway in case I was trouble. I raised my empty hand and kept the other on the bike. We watched each other across the ditch. The boy asked if the cat was going to die because there was no food left for it. Mum said, "Do not say that." The cat said something in cat. The dad asked me if the motorway was open. I said no. He nodded like that matched what he knew. He asked me if I had seen the army. I said no. He nodded again. He asked me if I was going to London. I said no. He said good. Then he told his family to keep walking. He did not ask for anything. He did not offer anything. We just shared a small, quiet understanding that the rules had flipped, and we were all rewriting them on the fly. When they were gone, I moved again. I cut a path toward a service station I knew near the A22, where there was a hardware aisle and good sightlines from the forecourt. The closer I got, the weirder the traffic patterns got. Cars angled across both lanes. An ambulance with its rear doors open and nobody inside. A man in a suit kicking a shop door with his heel and sobbing like a child. A woman with one shoe running with a dog lead in her hand, and no dog. At the station itself, a dozen people crowded the shop, arguing over water and battery packs, then dropping the argument mid-word as the clerk shouted that cards were down, and it was cash or nothing. Someone grabbed the till. Someone grabbed that someone. A bloke in a tracksuit swung a trolley like a ram. The glass went. The shop dissolved into a writhing mess of reach and pull. On the far pump, a man filled plastic bottles with petrol like he was bottling jam. He got splashback on his hands and face and did not notice. I rolled to the furthest pump, filled a jerrycan from the boot sale that lived on my rack, and kept my visor down. A woman with a baby in a sling stood by the air machine staring into nothing. The baby made small snuffling sounds. A man walked up to her and told her to come with him. She did not look at him. He took her elbow. The baby stirred and made a soft cry. The man flinched at the sound and looked around like someone had thrown a stone. He dropped her elbow and walked away. I finished, paid because old habits sit deep even when money is a joke, and rolled out. A man staggered into my path. He had the look of someone trying to wake up from a faint. His eyes found me and snapped. He came at me, mouth open wide, hands like claws. I swerved and the mirror clipped his wrist. He spun, hit the bonnet of a car, and bounced off. He rolled once and was up again, as if nothing had happened. I did not wait to see who he would pick next. I took the back road to a garden center because I figured no one would be fighting over hose fittings when bottled water ran out. The car park had been used for some kind of queue earlier and then abandoned mid-plan. Trolleys lay sideways. A barrier pole had been ripped out and left to drag. Inside, the light was weird and green through the greenhouse roof. Plants had fallen from benches and spilled soil across the aisles. 2 bodies lay face down near the tills, not moving. I do not know if they were asleep or dead. I do not pretend to guess anymore. I moved fast. I grabbed 2 big water containers, a folding saw, a hatchet that looked like a toy but was steel, and a pair of heavy gloves. At the camping aisle, I took a roll of paracord and a pack of chemical light sticks. I heard feet somewhere and froze, then heard birds fluttering through a broken pane, and realized my brain was making everything sound like footsteps. I paid by dropping cash on the counter. Stupid, but it stopped my hands shaking. I left by the staff door and did not check the bodies twice. By late afternoon, the light went flat and tired. The sky pressed low. The air tasted like rain and melted plastic. I wanted a box to sleep in. I do better with walls than with open sky. There was a half-built housing estate nearby, the one with show homes that never opened because the developer ran out of money. I found it by smell and memory. Concrete dust, new timber, empty streets with fresh tarmac and no tire marks. I rolled in past a sign with smiling people frozen in front of a house that does not exist. The first terrace had doors hung but no locks. I picked the end unit so I would have one flank I did not have to watch. The inside was plastered but not painted, bare bulbs hanging from blue electrical tape. No kitchen fitted yet. Good. Less to hide behind. I dragged a plasterboard stack in front of the back door and wedged a length of timber under the front handle down to a screw I put into the floorboards. It looked rough, but the door would not open inward without ripping the handle out. I stacked paint tubs against the hall so anything coming through would have to kick and trip. I blocked the bottom of the stairs with a flat pack staircase that had not been installed yet. I left myself a crawl space. Then I killed every bit of light that could be seen from outside. I tore strips from a dust sheet, wetted them, and pressed them into the window edges to kill any glow. I set a chemical light in the closet and closed the door so I had a small pool to work in, and I ate. Cold beans with a spoon from a camping set, straight from the tin. Dry crackers. Water sips, not gulps. My stomach argued. My head won. I checked my phone again. 1 bar. A text from a number I did not know. Shelter in place. Do not engage with infected national response underway. It looked like a blanket message sent to every number the cell tower could reach. I turned the phone off to save the battery and set my cheap watch alarm for every 2 hours. I dozed in slices, helmet on, back against the inner wall by the stairs, steel bar across my thighs, D-lock hooked through my belt. Every time the alarm buzzed, I woke, listened, drank a sip, and looked through a slit in the blind. The estate stayed dark. Once, far off, a scream tried to climb the hill and died as it ran out of strength. Once, footsteps passed the front, fast, then slower, then fast again, as if the owner could not pick a pace. They did not test the door. At some point it rained. I smelled wet dust and tar. The roof drummed, then whispered, then stopped. Around the time the watch said midnight, a car arrived. Headlights came down the estate road like a searchlight in a small theater. I killed the chemical light and flattened myself on the floor, inching to the window slit. The car was a large 4x4 with fresh plates and showroom shine. It looked wrong in the half-built street. It rolled to a stop 2 doors down, and 4 men got out fast. 2 had cricket bats. 1 had a long kitchen knife. 1 had a length of pipe. They wore decent clothes and had the trousers tucked into socks in that way people do when they panic and do not want anything crawling up their legs. 1 man kept looking over his shoulder. Another kept repeating that this was fine. They went inside the unit with the least boards on the windows. They did not check the street. They did not set a guard. I let my breath out slow and listened. 30 minutes later, the empty ones came. I do not know if the men had been followed or if sound draws them like heat. The first one came full tilt down the road, head forward, mouth open, hands ready to grab. He hit the 4x4 and bounced off, and did not acknowledge that metal had won. He banged on the door the men had entered and screamed. The scream rose and snapped and rose again. Then he stopped mid-sound and cocked his head like a bird. He sniffed the air. He ran at the next door, then the next. The men inside whispered too loud. I could hear the knife man telling someone to shut up, and it sounded like a shout because the night was that quiet. Another empty one came, then 2 more. They did not arrive in a pack. They came in bursts, like something in their brains fired when a noise peaked. They hit the door together. The wood held for 2 strikes. It did not hold for 3. What happened inside was ugly and quick. The knife was not as useful as the men probably expected. Cricket bats do damage, but not if you are swinging wild in a hallway and hitting plaster half the time. The pipe did better. Whoever had the pipe put an empty one down hard and fast, then lost his footing on spilled something and went over backward. The scream that followed belonged to someone who had lost a plan. One of the men ran out into the street and looked right at my window as he ran by. Our eyes met through glass and darkness. He did not ask for help. He ran into the night and something fast took him off his feet before he got 20 paces. I stayed flat on the floor and counted the space between sounds, because that helps when you cannot do anything else. When it was done, the street went dead again, except for small noises from the house the men had picked. A cupboard door creaking open and shut, a footstep that dragged, a wet cough from a throat that no longer understood anything. I waited until the watch ticked past 2 more alarms. I moved only when my legs told me they did not want to work anymore if I kept them still. I crawled into the kitchen, took a plastic bucket and used it. I am not proud. It is what it is. I put the bucket far from where I would sleep. Smell matters now. Sleep came in broken tiles. My mind kept showing me the kid with the kitchen knife, the man with the rifle, the woman with the baby, the 4x4 crowd. It put them in wrong places and made them swap voices. I pushed it all away and counted drills I had done in the past to keep my hands busy during bad nights. My whole life, I have avoided responsibility because it is heavy. Now I felt it anyway, but at least I could choose where to put the weight. On fuel, on food, on doors, on seeing before I am seen. Dawn scraped up pale and cold. The estate looked like a stage after a show. Stuff everywhere, no people. I cracked the back door and listened. A fox trotted through with a slice of bread in its mouth and did not even glance at me. I ate a strip of jerky, chewed slow until my jaw hurt, then drank. I put my boots back on. I stretched my hands until the tingling went. I tightened the tape on my improvised bar and wrapped the handle in cloth to stop it slipping in sweat. I pocketed the folding blade, stupid as it was, because something is better than nothing. I had to move the bike before someone else moved it for me. I cracked the front door and looked through the slit. The 4x4 sat with one rear door open and a dark smear down the sill. I could see boots inside the doorway the men had broken. The boots did not move. I slid out, kept low, and crossed to the cops. The tarp had held. I whispered a thank you to the past version of myself, who packed it. I rolled the bike in neutral down the slope so the engine note would not carry, and only hit the starter when I was under trees. It caught first time. Good machine. I patted the tank without thinking. On the road, I aimed away from London and away from the big towns. The plan was not noble. Keep to back lanes. Keep the revs low. Stop short of big choices, and watch from a distance. I could circle for a day or two while I waited for the loudest mess to burn down. Then I would think about fuel dumps, back entrances, and siphons. I would avoid hospitals. People always go to hospitals in films. I would avoid police stations for the same reason. I would not go where everyone else thought safety lived. Safety does not live anywhere now. It moves. I needed to move with it. On a ridge before the A21, I pulled up by a small church with a locked gate and a graveyard that ran down a slope like steps. The bell rope hung inside the porch, visible through the grill. The thought of that bell ringing and what it would call up made my skin crawl. I ate a biscuit and watched a man in the field below try to start his tractor. It coughed, coughed again, then turned over with a roar. He raised one hand at the noise he had made as if apologizing to the sky. 3 figures came out of the tree line 100 yards away, heads flicking, arms pumping. The man saw them late. He pushed the throttle until the engine note climbed stupidly high and slammed the tractor into gear. It jumped forward like a startled horse and almost died. Then it smashed through the corner of a dry stone wall and kept going, bumping hard across ruts. He looked back once, mouth open in a single long word I could not hear. The empty ones ran behind, at a pace that looked impossible to hold. He put the tractor between them and himself like a moving fence and made for the lane. I lost sight of him in the hedges. I did not wait to see if he had made it. I turned the bike toward a different line and went. Mid-morning, a police Land Rover blocked a crossroads. 2 officers stood by it. One held a loudhailer. The other cradled a long gun that looked like it had been pulled from a locked cabinet and handed over with a shrug and a wish. The loudhailer officer told people to return to their homes and await further instructions. He said the army was mobilizing. He said units were moving to key sites. He said medical support was en route. He said the same 3 sentences again and again. A group of 6 men and women on foot stopped in front of him and asked where to go. He said, "Go home." A woman with a toddler on her hip asked how to do that when her home was in another county and the motorway was shut. He said, "Go to the nearest building and lock the doors." He looked like he wanted to sit down on the verge and take his hat off and put it over his face. The officer with the gun kept scanning the tree line in tiny jerks. I filtered past on the grass, nodding. The gun officer shouted at me to stop. I said I was moving to a safe location. He told me to wait. I told him no, and rolled on because there is a time to follow orders, and that time had drifted out to sea. By noon, the heat lifted the smell of everything rotten and spilled. The road shimmered in places. I found a farm shop that had been cleared in a hurry. Fruit smashed underfoot. A till drawer on the floor with copper coins scattered like seed. A chalkboard sign that still listed the day's special. I slipped in through the side door and took packets that would keep and not stink, plus plasters, tape, a bottle of cheap painkillers, and a small first aid guide that had tips on sprains and broken fingers. I left money on the counter again. I knew it did nothing, but my hands remembered the gesture and settled after doing it. A radio in the back office burbled through static. I turned the dial with slow fingers until a voice came clear enough to grab. The presenter sounded like he had not slept and was trying to keep his mouth from shaking. He read numbers and instructions. He said stay indoors. He said emergency services were overwhelmed. He said infected display extreme aggression, loss of normal pain response, and a tendency to sprint toward noise and movement. He said do not attempt to restrain an infected person. He said do not wait for relatives who do not arrive. He said a lot of things that would have sounded insane yesterday and sounded normal now. The signal flared and died. Music cut in for a half song and then stopped mid-line. Outside, 2 men came up the lane at a run with garden forks in their hands. Their boots kicked gravel like flung marbles. They looked at me and then passed me to the shop. One shouted for milk. The other shouted for his mum. The first one saw my bike and shifted his grip on the fork. He had the quick look in his eyes that says a plan just appeared. I lifted the steel bar. He measured the distance, measured my stance, and decided it was not worth it. He shouldered past me into the shop. I left them with whatever was left and moved on. By late afternoon, my arms felt slow from holding the bars, and my neck hurt from the helmet weight. The bike rattled in a new way, a tinny buzz near the left panel. I pulled off into a lay-by and found a fairing screw working loose. I tightened it with the small driver from my kit and checked the chain again, because routine gives you back control. A van pulled in behind me and I tensed, but it only used the space to turn around, tires squealing, back doors rattling. I watched it go and thought about where I wanted to sleep tonight. Not the estate again. Once is luck. Twice is a pattern someone else can see. There is a countryside trick I learned from old riders who used to camp in barns when they chased rallies across the map. Churches, remote ones. They are built strong, few entrances, thick doors, sometimes a side vestry with a single window you can block. People assume churches are safe and then avoid them because the thought makes them uncomfortable. That is perfect for me. I found one marked on my old paper atlas and turned off across a gravel lane toward it. The church stood 3 fields back from the road behind a low wall with a kissing gate. Yew trees lined the path as if someone had drawn them with a ruler. The main door was locked, of course, but the tower had a low slit window at the base where an old maintenance ladder leaned. I walked the bike behind the wall, cloaked it with the tarp, and went to work. The ladder felt spongy under my weight, but it held. I slid into the tower, boots scraping stone. The air inside was cool and smelled like dust and wax. I pulled the ladder up by the last rung to hide my route and sat on the lowest step to listen. No voices, no scrabble, no bell rope brushing. Good. I made a quick circuit. The nave was locked off from the tower by a heavy wooden door with iron straps. The vestry door had a latch that I could wedge with the D-lock. The tower had only the slit windows at height. Perfect. I set my base in the tower steps. I rolled a spare jacket into a pillow and ate the last half of the crackers. I took small sips of water, I laid out the steel bar and the hatchet next to my right hand so I would not fumble in the dark. I set a line of small pebbles along the tower floor near the slit window, so if someone came through and kicked them, I would hear it. I put the phone on my thigh, screen down, vibrate on, watch alarm at 2 hours again. As full dark came, new sounds woke up. A fox barked hard and short. An owl took a vole, and the vole screamed once like a squeaky draw. Voices floated across the field, 2 men arguing about a map and whether a railway line was safer than a road. One wanted to cut across. The other said fences would trap them. Their voices faded. Then a third voice called from much closer, low and pleading, saying, "Please help, please open the door, please." The voice came from outside the church door. I froze. The voice kept repeating the same words with the same cadence. It did not knock. It did not shuffle. It did not cry in that messy way people cry when they are real. It just repeated in a loop, machine clean. I held my breath without meaning to, and waited. The voice delivered the line again, and this time, at the end, a second voice layered over the first on the same word, like an echo had caught up. I did not move. The loop went on for a long time, and then stopped without a goodbye. I did not sleep properly. I rested in slices again, and woke to the cold that creeps in before sunrise. I flexed my fingers until they felt like mine. I ate a bit of jerky that tasted like salt and rubber. I peed in a corner where no one would step. I stretched my back until it cracked. I looked out through the slit window. Mist sat over the fields. The churchyard looked larger in the grey. No movement on the path. The 4 stones I had placed at the window sat where I had left them. I lifted the ladder down with care and slid out into the morning. Day 2, but it still felt like day 1, because time had stretched and flattened. I walked to the bike, scanned the lane, then rolled slowly out. I did not start the engine until I knew I could make the road without drawing attention. The first cough of the exhaust sounded like a gunshot in the mist. Birds erupted from the U and banked away. I let the engine warm, then tipped in and went light on the throttle. The plan was the same, and new. Keep moving. Stay out of funnels. Watch for the fast ones. Do not spend energy on arguments about fairness. If a door looks wrong, it is wrong. If a sound stops too fast, it is bait. If someone looks healthy, it means nothing. If someone asks for help, weigh it against the fact that I am one man with a bike and a bag of tins. If I can do a small thing without dying, maybe. If not, no. I do not owe the world a grand gesture. I owe myself the next sunrise. As the sun pushed up through the haze, the M25 stretched off to my left like a scar someone had cut across the land and then forgotten. Rows of still cars sat like abandoned tools after a long job. Doors open, windscreens cracked, bags spilled across bonnets. The early mist clung to the metal, softening the shape of everything, but it didn't hide what was underneath. That motorway would rot for years before anyone even thought of clearing it, if anyone ever did. I kept the bike steady and tried not to look too long at the rows of cars. There were faces behind some of the glass, slumped, waiting, hoping, dead, or worse. I didn't want to know which. I knew already that some had tried to hide in their vehicles, thinking doors would keep them safe. Others probably got trapped in the panic. Some never even knew what was coming. I thought about my mate Mark back in Croydon, on that sagging sofa with the television blaring. I wondered if he'd woken up yet, if he'd noticed something was wrong, if the power had cut while he was asleep, or if he'd just turned the volume up like he always did to block out the world. I pictured him opening the curtains and seeing smoke instead of rooftops. I wondered if he would have tried to leave, or just cracked another beer and waited. I thought about the woman at the petrol station with the baby strapped to her chest and that empty look in her eyes. The way she just stood there while the world came apart. The farmer with the rifle and the wife locked in the pantry. The man with the chair jammed under the door while the banging never stopped. The girl who sat on her car bonnet eating crisps like she was watching a football match. And the group in the 4x4 who thought a nice new estate with plastered walls and double-glazed windows would somehow be enough. Most of them were gone now. Or not gone exactly, just changed into something else, something hollow. I kept the throttle steady and my eyes up. The countryside blurred by in green and brown patches, but I didn't take it in. I wasn't admiring the view. I was watching for movement. Anything too fast, too straight, too locked in. You know an infected when you see one. There's no second guess. They move like the idea of hesitation never existed. I am not brave. I am not kind. I am not the bloke who volunteers or steps up. I am not the one who shouts orders or gives comfort. I get tired fast. I avoid mess. I avoid people. I say no more than I say yes. I leave when things start to break. That's not new. That's who I've always been. It just fits better now. Out here, it might even keep me alive. The world shrank to a handful of rules. Petrol, water, food, tools, shelter. Never trust locked doors. Never stay where you sleep. Stay quiet. See before you're seen. Don't wait. Don't freeze. And never ever help anyone screaming unless you're ready to join them. It's not cruel. It's not heartless. It's just maths. The bike hummed under me like it always did when it was warm and settled. The tires rolled smooth along the edge of a B road just wide enough for a lorry to ruin your morning. Hedgerows whipped by in flashes. Every tree shadow was something to track. Every rustle was something to clock. A green sign for a village I'd never heard of shot past on the left. No idea if it was still there, or if anything inside it was still worth the word village. The infected were out there, running down tracks, cutting through woods, vaulting fences like they'd trained for it. I heard distant screams now and again, but never close. Not yet. I didn't stop. I didn't look. Someone else's nightmare was someone else's. It didn't help to carry it. I put my head down behind the windscreen and rode. I passed a lay-by with a caravan flipped onto its side and 2 broken windows in the back. No one inside. Just a pair of boots poking out from beneath the chassis. Could have been a body. Could have been bait. I didn't stop. I didn't need more stories in my head. Everywhere I went, I saw traces of people who thought it would be temporary. Blankets tucked in car seats. Shopping bags. Letters pinned to windows. Gone to Mum's. We're upstairs. Please help. She's hurt. Most of the writing was smeared by now. Rain, dirt, blood. Hard to tell. Up ahead, a small village sign came into view, bent at an angle. Bullet holes in the metal. Something had happened here. Something loud. There were black marks on the road, like tires that had tried to stop and failed. I eased off the throttle and coasted into a gap behind a hedge, switched the engine off. Listened. Nothing. No birds. No breeze. No voices. The kind of silence that pressed too close to your ears. I stayed there a while, watching the rooftops between the trees, waiting to see if anything twitched or leaned the wrong way. I waited long enough that my knees started to cramp. That was my sign to go. I don't stay still for long. Not anymore. I kicked the engine back to life. The roar felt too loud after all that stillness. I rode slow past the turnoff and left the village behind, without ever crossing its edge. If there were survivors in there, they had their own problems. I had mine. Somewhere out there was a place quiet enough, empty enough, and forgotten enough that I could hole up for a few days. Rest the bike, clean the chain, check the fuel lines, boil some water, count the tins, count them again. That's the rhythm now. Forward, stop, check, listen, move, that's it. I wasn't riding toward hope. I wasn't riding toward people. I wasn't looking for someone to save, or some radio tower pumping out salvation. I was riding because stopping meant waiting to die. Riding meant maybe making it one more day. That's all. Even if the whole world fell apart behind me, even if every road turned into another dead end full of twisted metal and torn clothes, I'd keep going. Not because I believed there was something good left waiting, just because I didn't want to end up another face in the window of a car, staring blank through smeared glass, waiting for nothing. I'd keep moving, just to keep moving. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to keep the stories alive. For now, stay quiet, stay vigilant, and stay alive. Jack's Nightmares, signing off. Until next time, survivor.